Hello, my lovelies. Ginny O here, the author with no last name, and it's time for Ginny O Talks, the part of the channel where I talk about things in the creative community. And today, I want to talk to you about writing the best story you can. Or why I don't plan on doing clickbait videos. I'm sure that when you search for a helpful writing YouTube author person or somebody who was an agent, which I am not or never have been, you're going to come across a lot of videos that are like, here are the best 10 fantasy tropes, here are the worst 10 fantasy tropes, here's the worst sci-fi stuff, here's the best mystery stuff, here's the best, here's the worst. Lots and lots of listicles to tell you, what tropes are good or bad in that author tuber or booktuber or former agent's opinion. Okay, and that is the key word. Opinion. Opinion. So I first kind of ran across this whole type of thing about best and worst openings, whether or not we should be using the mirror trope, blah, 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 when I was querying my first book, my first original IP book, The Lone Prospect. Before that, I had spent many, many years writing in the fanfiction community under a couple of different pseudonyms, which I'm not going to tell you because what I write as fanfiction doesn't really have anything to do with what I write as original fiction. So, if you like my original fiction works, you might not like my fanfiction works and vice versa. So, not really important or germane. But I spent a lot of time in fanfiction, and if there's one thing I learned when reading and writing fan fiction is that there are trends in the fan fiction community just as much or more so than there are trends in the traditional writing community, and those trends aren't good or bad. It just depends on what you want to read, which is why I really, really, really want an AO3 style archive for, traditional books and self-published books. Just, a synopsis and then like a little blurb or, like a book page so authors can put their tropes in and what genres they are, and, you can narrow it down that way. And what the rating of the book is, and if there's any trigger warnings, but we're going to do a video about that. And so I really came into this whole querying process going, everything is an opinion, okay? And when you're doing this querying process, you start going and you start looking at these, what's the best opening? What you want to know what 5 pages to send to an agent so that they'll get excited about your book and want to pick your book up. Or you're going to their manuscript wish list and being like, oh, I have a book like they have on their manuscript wish list. I'm going to send them my book and they're going to pick up my project and it's going to be hunky-dory. And then you get a one-line rejection letter that says, I'm sorry, this is not for me, even though it supposedly fits all their criteria that they wanted on their wish list. So it's an opinion. And I mean, I've come across articles full of these opinions. It's an opinion. So here I am, I am not a traditionally published author, and I am not a former agent or current agent, so I don't feel like I have that quote-unquote authority to be telling you what is the best tropes or the worst tropes, mainly because as a reader, particularly, I will try anything just about once in the sci-fi or fantasy genre. I've read cozy mysteries, I've read not so cozy mysteries, I've read westerns, I've read, I have read a very broad variety of books over my life, and it does not matter to me what tropes you have in your story, what are these foundational building blocks and ideas that you have. It matters to me more how you execute them. Do you have a cool setting? Are your characters interesting? Are the conflicts and obstacles believable? Do they have a personal stake in what's going on? Oh dear, that was almost, I think that was like 4 of the 5 things you need to have to write a novel. I care more about your execution than I care about it's enemies to lover. It's only one bed. Or, or fake marriage. About what type of story ideas that you could go to TV tropes and look them up to see examples of them that you're putting into your story. Because let's all sit here and face the truth that people love those tropes. They love having those very familiar building blocks of a story, and they will seek out those same building blocks over and over again. See the romance genre. The romance genre is not, a $1.2 billion industry because every single book that comes out of it is original and new and exciting. So, you have entire sections of the romance genre that are dedicated to, cozy bakery mysteries or romances or, actually, cozy bakery romances is actually a thing. Yes, it is. And it's a thing also in cozy mysteries. And, you have whole sections devoted to werewolf romances or paranormal romances, or you've got, which is not romance and ghosts, by the way, but, fae and elves and vampires and medusas, etc. You've got whole sections devoted to historical romances like Regency or pirates or whatever takes their fancy. You've got whole sections devoted towards every single type of trope you can think of under the sun. Pretending to be a boy or pretending to be in a different class or station than you actually are. Dating your boss. And it's a really huge thing. And of course, it's romance. It's pulp fiction. Ugh. But what romance can really tell us and can really show us, it's the same with mysteries. Mysteries have their own, genres and tropes and little boxes, and fantasy has its own little boxes, and science fiction has its own little boxes, depending on what you're doing. What it can tell us, though, is that people want more of what they've already seen. Okay? Hollywood remakes would not be quite, and spin-offs and stuff would be not quite so popular and great money makers if people didn't want more of what they've already seen. So when you're writing your story, don't worry about being original, okay? It's like the Two Cakes comic. I don't know if you've seen the Two Cakes comic. It was popular on Tumblr for a while. But, so, there's a picture of two drawn cakes and a couple stick figures. And one is the writer and author 1 and author 2. And so the author, the first author is putting down their cake, and it's, just a couple layers, and it's got like a little strawberry on it. It's not so great, in their mind. And then the other author is putting down this 3-layer cake with lots of fancy frosting swirls and, pretty flowers. And so writer 1 is with the 2-layer cake is going, oh, his cake is better than mine. And then the reader comes over, and the reader looks at it, and they just break out into this big smile. 2 cakes! Okay? The reader does not care if you are 100% original, because the reader is going to want to go and find things that they've already read, that they're similar to they've already read, and, read those type of things. So maybe they're on AO3 or whatever, and they're going, or Wattpad, and they're like, I want to read found family. So they type in the little found family tag, and it comes up with all these found family stories, which may or may not be found family stories, depending on how well the author knows found family. And like, oh my god, look at all this reading I have. My TBR has just gotten so big. Yay! They don't, and yes, some of them, they're gonna start reading and they're gonna be like, this isn't what I'm looking for right now. Maybe it's not really found family. Maybe they, maybe they aren't gelling with the characters yet, and they're gonna set it to the side. But they're just gonna keep going and keep looking until they find that, found family books or set of books that they can gush about on their social media to their friends. I didn't go through 16 versions of urban fantasy and then write my own because I hate urban fantasy. I love urban fantasy. I love the whole kind of, the just the multiple things we could do with urban fantasy outside of noir mysteries. What type of shit can we do with when we have monsters, or what we consider monsters, fae and elves and werewolves and vampires and half demons and whatever, living among humans, whether it's behind the veil or, without a veil. What type of stories could we tell with that? Why are we still telling the same old mystery stories? I don't know. I want a found family story with werewolves, so I wrote myself a urban fantasy found behind the veil found family story with werewolves. So when you've got, so, and then you also have to remember that you're just working with your story, with the skills you have at the time, the best skills you got. So that cake that you first started with, okay, it's 2 layers and, it had a strawberry on top and, the frosting wasn't very well put on or whatever. And then the reader was like, but I loved the basic concept of your story. Please keep writing more stories. And you have to, so you keep writing more stories and you keep writing more stories and you get better at writing your stories. So now your cake goes from being a 2-layer cake to a 3-layer cake. And you've come up with your own style and your own voice and your own set of, tropes and stuff in the characters. So maybe it's not a round cake anymore. Maybe it's a 3-layer square cake and it's asymmetrical and it's a bear. You don't put on lots and lots of frosting because you want it to be a bear cake. And then you put on lots of little fruit and then you sprinkle it with sugar. And it's still, in the same genre type, and it's still got the same type of things that, it's a 3-layer cake and it's got, some frosting on it and, some fruit and whatever. And the reader's still gonna go, oh my god, 2 cakes! Okay? 3 cakes, 4 cakes. So many cakes! So many books. So write the best story you can with the skills you have at the time, because out there's a reader who's going to love that type of story as much as you do. That, they would be like, oh, okay, so the execution could use a little work, maybe, but I still loved your story. I still want you to read more of it, and I still want you to write more, and so we can enjoy this world together. And yes, fan fiction particularly is a lot more, as a community, forgiving than a traditional or self-publishing community. Okay, in traditional or self-publishing, you're not going to get the same amount of time that a fan fiction writer is going to get to improve your craft. Okay, your craft will improve, but there is a certain amount of, you need to start at this level, up here rather than down here in the traditional writing community versus a fan fiction writing community. Okay, so if your first couple books end up being rejected, which, hey, I don't have a traditional publishing contract yet, so didn't stop me from self-publishing my books. Don't I can't say don't get discouraged, because it is discouraging. But you have to understand that the more you write, and the better you will get, and the better that cake will be, and the better your stories will be for having that experience. And you can't get that experience. You're not going to get up here without first starting down here. So I don't care about the tropes in your stories. I don't care what 101 authors thinks are the best and the worst, and things like that. I want you to write that story you love with the tropes you love, and I want you to write it the best way you can, the best way you know how. With your voice and your style and your chosen group of characters, because it will feel authentic. It won't feel like, oh, I chose 3 keywords out of Amazon that are trending, within now and will be trending in the next 3 months to write a book. Yes, okay, in December. If you're going to be publishing a book in December and it's like a romance or something, maybe a Christmas-themed novel is a good idea. What I'm saying is that, you don't you can use these tropes and these ideas, and that they might consider them pulp ideas or whatever, and make something wonderful and good for yourself and for your friends and for people who like that sort of thing. And not have to be, these 3 keywords are on Amazon and I'm writing the market because I want to sell books. Okay, write the best story you can. I mean, write the stories you love. Don't fall for these clickbait YouTube videos that are like, this is the worst trope in fantasy right now. Well, the next 10 years, 5-10 years, that trope in fantasy is going to come back. Oh, we had that Twilight craze. We're all so sick of vampires. Oh, what's coming back? Vampires. First we had Buffy, and we had Twilight, and who knows what the next big vampire thing is going to be. If you want to write your story about vampires, write the best story about vampires you can. Do your research. Maybe go through all the reactions to Dracula daily and be like, oh my god, Dracula was not as quite put together as all these movies want to make him out to be. Maybe we should do a real Dracula adaptation. Or, do your research into how vampires came to be. Ask a Mortician has done some videos about what was going on around the time that Dracula was, being written. Did you know that some parts of the Dracula story were actually because of America in the United States? Because parts of America have a lot in common with Eastern Europe, if the immigrants weren't from Eastern Europe themselves, or weather-wise. So things that were going on in Eastern Europe and things that were going on in America had some really interesting parallels around the time when Dracula was being written. But that's kind of an offset. So here's the thing. There's always going to be people and agents and YouTubers out there with opinions about what is great and what is, the absolute worst. You should never ever write this. It's awful, horrible. I'm so sick of seeing this. Okay? They're always going to be out there. And it's going to change, year by year as the trends come and go. What they think is bad 5 years ago might be really great this year, because they haven't seen it in 5 years. And you cannot, as a person, predict those trends unless you're paying really, really close attention to, say, Publishers Weekly or something, because a lot of times these trends seem to come out of the blue unless you're really good at tracking the zeitgeist. So it's just better to write the best story you know how to write. And when you start looking to query it, yes, take a look at the trends. See, take a look at the manuscript wish lists and see, are the tropes and the ideas in your story, trending with the agents and, trending with being bought through Publishers Weekly? Because the sales of the what's going to happen at Publishers Weekly is a better indicator of what's going to come out in the next couple of years. And if your book can fit into those trends on the manuscript wish list in the Publishers Weekly, you might have a better chance of, getting a traditionally published contract. And at the same time, so if you can either sit on that book until you start seeing those trends come around and then try to query it, or you can, self-publish it, or you can, just go on and write the next thing. Just keep writing stories that you love, and you can, in querying them, maybe you'll get lucky, maybe you won't. Remember, this querying stuff is a huge lottery. And you will be putting the best stories that you have in you out there into the world one way or the other. So just write the best story you have in you. And don't worry about what other people think. I think that's maybe the best summarization I can put of it. And I will not and don't plan on ever making a video of, the best tropes in fantasy fiction, the best things in science fiction. No, it just, maybe I'll keep doing book reviews, but I don't plan on ever making those types of videos. Because they wouldn't be honest, in my opinion. They're not honest. Because it is just opinion. But hey, at least you know what authors and agents won't like your book. And what booktubers. Maybe that will help. Take care of yourselves, my lovelies. Stay safe, bless, and I'll see you in the next video.